Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. This is the business of sports.
The business of sports can be intimidating or hard for a startup to break into.
We really appreciate when our owners are actually there, with us through the journey.
Teams, ours especially, have been very intentional to diversify at all levels of the company.
I think we're in the golden years for the NFL and college football.
Our demographic reach has continued to expand.
This is going to be really unlocking the streaming platform for sports fans.
Sports valuations are rising. We'll see when they peak.
You don't have to be the best in your sport to make a whole ton of money.
Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with my colleague Damian Sassower. Scarlet will join us later in the show. Coming up, we talk hockey with NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly. We'll talk about how they're bringing some of its stars to the world stage with a four-nation tournament going on now.
This is an effort by the NHL and the NHL Players Association to bring back international best-on-best competition on a regular basis, where the players and our fans can count on the fact that we will be contesting kind of world supremacy in hockey.
Plus, we'll hear from NASCAR President Steve Phelps.
Yeah, all that and more is on the way on the Bloomberg Business of Sports. But first, the NFL season came to a close with a decisive win for the Philadelphia Eagles in the Super Bowl.
Hurts back, looking. He is going deep, and it is caught. Touchdown!
The Slim Reaper.
Devontae Smith, 46 yards.
The Slim Reaper.
The big game drew in a record TV audience of almost 130 million viewers and also drew in big numbers for sportsbooks and for some other companies looking to cash in on the big game.
Here to take us through all that, and plus the NBA All-Star Weekend, is Bloomberg Global Business of Sports reporter Ira Boudway. First of all, Ira, thank you again, my man, for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Always a pleasure.
Yes, we've always bet on the Super Bowl. Even before we had online gambling, we were betting our pennies and nickels and quarters. Well, we won't be betting pennies anymore, but we had nickels and quarters all on the Super Bowl. And now there's a new way to bet on the Super Bowl. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, so just before this year's game in December, Crypto.com came out with swaps trades. So these are technically done under the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. They launched them in all 50 states. And you're taking a yes or no position on will the Chiefs win the game, basically. But it works almost exactly like betting on a sports book. And after Crypto.com did it, the prediction exchange Kalshi came out with one. And so everyone's waiting to see whether the CFTC will let them do this, because if they do, and it's under review now, then really the floodgates are open for futures exchanges to become 50-state sports books.
So, Ira, take us through, just how close the crypto exchanges lines on the game were relative to, for example, FanDuel or DraftKings. I mean, were they on the screws or like, for example, were the Eagles the favorite?
So they move all the time. That's one interesting thing about them is
like live markets, right? Okay.
Yeah, they're live markets, and you can sell your position whenever. So, for instance, just as an experiment during the game, right before anybody scored, I took out a $50 yes on the Eagles, and then I just watched, and throughout the game, so it did pay me $96 for winning in the end, but during the game at different points, I could have cashed out for $80, $85 as it became apparent that the Eagles were winning. Now, there's something like this in sports betting where they will offer you cash outs at different points where you can kind of capture your winnings and not risk losing it. But this is just a constantly shifting price, and you can always sell your position. So, but yeah, I think roughly speaking, in terms of who was the favorite, who was not, they're following the same forces of the crowd that sports books are.
Now, I want to explain this because it's as a degenerate gambler, you don't see odds like you say. Like, say, for instance, I wanted to make a bet on the Chiefs. I would have to put up and I'm just making it up here, $110 to win 100.
Right.
Well, what they're saying is that, okay, the yes will you pay $56 on the Chiefs and we'll pay you $100. It's the same thing, but it makes it simpler for let me use the phrase the non-gambler.
Yeah, I mean, the main difference is that you're not betting against the house. And so there's a person on the other side of this contract, which is why it's called a swap, right? Mm-hmm. And they keep a little piece of it. The exchange does for the service, but it's a yes and a no, right? Somebody's on the other side and they're just arranging this swap. And so it's slightly different in the mechanics, but effectively there's odds. There's a percentage chance implied that your team's going to win or lose. And you're going to, get a payout depending on if they do or don't. So in the end, if you know the math, it's the same thing.
So Ira, I wonder, why do you suppose the big sport books like FanDuel and DraftKings don't offer that service or that ability to, basically cash out, before the game even starts? Is that too complicated for them? Does that take a different type of algorithm or programming power? Or is it just about money and commission dollars? It forces you to lose money and then go back to the well and try to bet on another winner. I mean, I'm just curious why.
Yeah, I mean, the main difference is, so they do have a thing called cash out, and that will be the book, the FanDuel or whoever you bet against. You're betting against the house. Will say, hey, it looks like you got a winner here, but you could still lose it. What if we pay you a partial payout now? They do have that function, but it's kind of up to them how to turn it on, how often to offer it. Whereas in these exchanges, it's a liquid market. You can sell your position just like you would in any portfolio. As long as there's people in there offering the other side of that price, then you can do it. So the sportsbooks do have this trick. It's just not, I think, as well understood by the public and not maybe as commonly used. If you're a trader, this is a very familiar activity.
It seems to me like people doing this are more allowing to do this because there are a lot of people that are saying, no, gambling is terrible. Don't do it. Well, now it is if you get addicted. But I mean, it's, don't do gambling, this and that, whatever. But this sounds more, they're selling it like an investment, is why I can say it.
Yeah, I mean, they are trying to position it as not sports betting. I think they're doing that mainly for regulatory reasons. The states that regulate sports betting don't love this idea. The sports books that have worked to gain licenses in the states that regulate sports betting don't love this idea. And the sports leagues that have worked with the sports books in the states to come up with rules that they can live with don't love this idea because at this point it's very lightly regulated. And so crypto.com, Kalshi, these exchanges, they want to say, oh, no, it's not quite the same thing. But if you try it, you will see it is very much the same thing.
And so how many, I mean, you just named, were those the only two that offered this service during the Super Bowl?
Yeah, so crypto.com went first. Kalshi came out second. For a brief minute, Robinhood was going to partner with Kalshi to offer these to some of their approved traders. But they backed off of that after the CFTC warned them about it. So as of the Super Bowl, it was those two. And I think the expectation is that others will follow. Depending on, it looks like the timeline is April for the CFTC to say whether or not they are going to let this go forward. But if they do, I expect you will see others begin offering all types of sports futures contracts because it's a really good way to get people to do prediction markets. They tend to want to do the presidential election every 4 years and then kind of forget about it in the general public, whereas sports, year round and people are interested.
Well, Ira, if I could see the future, I would have told you that, Mark Lore and Alex Rodriguez would finally be successful in their bid to take control of the Minnesota Timberwolves. Talk to us a little bit about that story. I mean, our friend Alex Rodriguez is now an NBA owner.
Well, he will be, presumably. They still have to get over the hurdle of getting approval from the rest of the NBA owners. They need 23 out of the group to approve them. But I think that is expected to happen. So yeah, they bought the team back in 2021, but it was this stepwise transaction that they arranged with the owner, Glenn Taylor, where they were going to do it in installments. And it got hung up in March of last year when they were supposed to make the payments that would put them into majority control and make them the control owners of the team. Taylor said, sorry, you didn't meet the terms of the contract, deal's off. You're still a minority owner, but you're not going to be able to take over. And A-Rod and Mark Lowry said, actually, no, we're entitled to an extension. We've got the funding in place. So it went to a mediator as the purchase agreement stipulated. They couldn't get a solution in mediation. It went to arbitration. And then just recently, the 3-panel arbitrators said A-Rod and Lowry had in fact met the terms and are entitled to close the transaction. And so that's what we expect to happen. And so, they should be the new Timberwolves owners very soon.
Well, see, you know what, Ira, I have to pivot a little bit here on you, and I got to look, a little bit south of Minnesota, quite a bit south. I got to look down to Texas, to the Dallas Mavericks, right, who have, a new kind of ownership in this sort of post-Mark Cuban era. And at the trade deadline, he did something really, 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 really interesting, didn't they? They traded away a 25-year-old 5-time All-Star in Luka Doncic to the Los Angeles Lakers without even letting other teams bid for him. I mean, what goes on with, these owners, can we just talk to Alex Rodriguez, please, and make sure he at least calls the Knicks first if he's going to offer up somebody like that? What goes on, behind the scenes as you head into the trade deadline? These owners, talk to us about your thoughts there. What are people talking about?
Yeah, that was a really shocking deal. It's so shocking that you've, now launched dozens of conspiracy theories about why they might have done it. Such as they really want to move to Las Vegas, where, the Adelson family have a lot of connections in home. And so they were trying to pull a Major League. This is the plot of Major League, by the way. They're trying to
wow, that is so...
I think the deal was so shocking that people are searching for explanations. I think probably it comes down to the Mavericks ownership and management didn't want to pay Luka because they don't believe he's committed and that he's never going to do that last bit that he needs to do, that they want him to do. And so they shipped him. Now, there's a lot of reasons you could say that was a really bad decision. And you're right, they didn't shop him around a lot ahead of time. They didn't maybe get the best price for him. I think that mostly had to do with the fact that they knew that this couldn't get out, that he was on the trading block, that basically, there'd be mutiny in their fan base.
Well, I know we got to go, but I don't see a problem of the other NBA owners, not okaying this. Forgive the double negative, because we're talking about A-Rod and we're talking about Mark Lowry. Who's going to say no to this?
Yeah, I expect it to go through. I think there was maybe some notion that if Taylor wanted to rally opposition, he's a very long-term owner. I think he does have allies among other NBA owners, and maybe he would have been able to, gum up the works. But it sounds like he's not going to try to do that. And I think barring that, there's no reason why.
Our thanks to Ira Boudway for joining us. He's Bloomberg Global Business of Sports reporter. Up next, we talk with NASCAR. For my colleague Damian Sassower, I'm Michael Barr. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
This is the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with my colleague Damian Sassower. Scarlet will join us later in the show. We have on the line Steve Phelps, president of NASCAR, the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing. Mr. Phelps, thank you for joining us. From an old NASCAR fan, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thrilled to be here and appreciate your fandom.
I was a fan back in the day when they, we go back with, when I was like about 4 or 5, and back then they came on Wide World of Sports. When you wanted to see the Daytona 500, you had to wait because they didn't have it live yet. And then when they decided to broadcast it live, and this even before Flag to Flag, ABC was starting to broadcast it live. People got excited, and then 1979 CBS brought Flag to Flag coverage of the Daytona 500, and old geezer Barr remembers all of that. And my goodness, it's like this sport has come a long way, sir.
Well, I'll take that as a compliment. I think you're right. I believe that we're doing some really cool things. The race product on the track is arguably the best it's ever been. We had 3 of our closest finishes in history. Mm-hmm. Our single closest 3 wide finish at Atlanta last year, and then headed into what is always terrific racing at the Daytona 500. So super excited about, kind of where we are today, and very optimistic about what the future of this sport looks like.
Mr. Phelps, we're going to get into that Daytona 500 in just a minute, but you're only the fifth individual to be the president of NASCAR since its inception in 1948. And what you've done, Fox, NBC, Amazon Prime, TNT, these 7-year partnerships that you've developed under your stewardship, can you talk to our audience a little bit about all the work you've done in preparing for where NASCAR is today and what its future looks like?
Yeah, I think, we're really excited about all of our new media partners. So obviously Fox and NBC are back from the 10-year deal we did with them that concluded at the end of 24. But to add Amazon, a pure streamer, and then, TNT and Max, which is obviously a combination of cable and streaming, and then the CW for all of our Xfinity series for those 33 races, I just think it is certainly a little more fragmentation, and we'll accept that. But I think it was really important for us to make sure that we had a mix of broadcast, cable, and streaming, which is exactly what we have. And I would suggest that with these world-class media partners, that the promotion of NASCAR is probably going to be at its height. And that to me is really, really important. So you had, 2 media companies that wanted to come back, which is terrific, says a lot about what we've done over the past 5 or 6 years. And then you have these 3 new entities coming in that we're also thrilled to come to NASCAR and be part of what it is that we're doing. So, we're very bullish, excited about the media partners and so much more.
Can I bring up also that this is the 67th running of the Daytona 500? And we go back, Lee Petty won the first one. And ever since, you've had a lot of exciting races at Daytona. And now the so-called Clash used to be at Daytona, but over the past weekend, you guys went back to your roots and you went to Bowman Gray Stadium to hold the Clash. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I think it was a nod back for 3 years, we did the Clash at the Coliseum out in LA,
right?
Which was terrific. But I think it had run its course. That's an important marketplace for us. We'll be back in Southern California, hopefully as soon as 2026. What that looks like, I'm not prepared to talk about at this point, but it's important. So, but we did want to do a nod to kind of our history and our roots. And Bowman Gray Stadium is a special place. So we had created a relationship, with the city and the folks that held the lease. And so now we've assumed that lease for the next, roughly 30 years. So, but you talk to the competitors, whether it's drivers or crew or every single person that was there in that sold out stadium, and it was electric. A little bit chilly, but it was electric and just hard-nosed, short-track racing. Some tempers flared. I think it was a nod, to short-track racing in our history, and I think that's important. And no determination, if we're going to go back, but I would say that the industry was thrilled that we were there, and it worked, right? So we had a sold out crowd. The rating was really good, significantly up from last year. So those things are all good. Yeah. So it's, a hope springs eternal, if you will, for everyone when they unpack in Daytona.
I swear, the Bowman Gray race, I thought I saw a Hudson Hornet out there, but man, that was nice to bring back the roots. I'm sorry, Damian. Go ahead.
Oh, well, Mr. Phelps, let's go there, right? It is Daytona 500 time. And, I know we want to focus on the big guys, Busch, Hamlin, Logano, but Byron Bell, Chastain, these young bucks are making a challenge here, no? Talk to us about the future of NASCAR.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. If you consider, past champions that we've had over the last, 5 or 6 years, Joey Logano's been in the sport for a long time, but he's not old. I don't know what he is, 34, 35 years old. He'll be driving for another decade, most likely. But you think of the guys like Ross Chastain, or you think about Chase Elliott, or like Kyle Larson is arguably the best driver people would say on the planet, right? He can race anything, anywhere, anytime. He's going to do the double again this year with the, he didn't do the double last year. He only did one segment of the double, which was the Indy 500, but then to come back for the Coke 600 and see him do that, I think it's going to be a really cool thing. It is the opportunity to win them both legitimately. But the young drivers are making a name, the Bubba Wallaces and the Daniel Suarez's, and those guys are bursting onto the scenes. And we've got all this crop of really amazing young drivers in our Xfinity series, in our Craftsman Truck series, and going up through the ARCA series. So having all that pipeline of young talent is great. And I think what we're doing from a content perspective, our content for this year is going to be bigger, bolder, and better than it's ever been. And we've invested significant dollars in our new productions facility. We need to make sure that we are continuing to make stars of our drivers. And the way to do that is through better content, better distribution, a more varied distribution, and that's exactly what we're doing.
I want to bring up, you talk about drivers, and I guess there's a new rule, and please educate me on it. I guess I'm going to call it the world-class drivers rule. And you could have an Helio Castroneves and get a spot in the Daytona 500. It would kind of be like what the old provisionals used to be. Can you explain that?
Sure. So it's a new rule for this particular event. Whether we tweak it in the future, I don't know. But for this event, Castroneves will be in the field. So he is either going to earn his way in, or he'll have essentially a provisional that will allow him to race. But he will race in the Great American Race on Fox on Sunday. And I think that's a really cool thing. We are always open to ways to help promote the sport. He is a world-class driver who has gone through all the necessary things to prove that he should be in this field, because it's always safety first. And from there, it's promotion. So he has passed the plans for our competition folks and our officials to make sure that he is worthy to be in the race and he's not a danger to others in the race, and he won't be. And I think that's really exciting. And, I think this kind of rule, this new piece that's coming into effect, I think we'll have some really cool opportunities for us both later in this year, but also in years forward.
I'd love to ask you this question. I mean, look, obviously F1 gets a lot of the headlines, right? And I'm sure you hear this all the time. How has Formula One impacted your strategy? How is it impacting NASCAR? But, I just have to highlight for our audience, just look at 2024, right? 3 of the top 7 closest finishes in Cup history, right? 18 different winners from 10 organizations, the most green flag passes for the lead since 2005. The concept of parity, of real competition, certainly in race car driving, it's a real deal. I mean, you look at the NFL relative to Major League Baseball and the NBA. I mean, it's a concept of, anybody can win on any given Sunday. It holds, for the viewing audience. And I'm curious, is that by design? Is that part of your plan at NASCAR to keep things, to keep a level playing field, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's really important. What fans want is great racing. So they want close, competitive, side-by-side racing with passing. So of all those different stats that you just threw out there, I think the number of green flag passes throughout the field, or green flag passes for the lead, to me, that's really cool, because that really embodies what it means to have great racing. The fact that we had 18 different winners from 10 different organizations and anyone can win on any given Sunday, I think that's really cool, right? So if I'm a race fan of a particular driver or particular race team, I know that and it's so hard to win in NASCAR, but I know my driver has a shot. So again, when the green flag drops this weekend, literally anyone in the field can win. And I think we saw it. We had a one-car team win with Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Yeah. I mean, that's just a really cool story. And maybe a powerhouse team will win, like a Hendrick Motorsports or a Penske or a Gibbs, but maybe it'll be Trackhouse with, Chastain or Suarez or SVG, right? And I just think, to me, that's so cool. And this race is, 3+ hours of just wide open racing and, trying to stay out of the chaos that can happen, with big wrecks here at a facility like this and this type of racing. I would say 5 parts skill and 1 part luck. And maybe I don't have those percentages exactly correct, but you have to have a little luck as part of this as well. You certainly need to be talented. I certainly couldn't be in there, nor would I. Don't have the talent.
Our thanks to NASCAR President Steve Phelps for joining us. Up next, we turn to hockey and how the NHL is making an international push with a special 4-nation tournament. For my colleague Damian Sassower, I'm Michael Barr. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.
This is Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio.
Thanks for joining us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports, where we explore the big money issues in the world of sports. I'm Michael Barr, along with my colleagues Scarlet and Damian Sassower. The NHL is looking to grow internationally with a first-of-its-kind multi-nation tournament featuring NHL stars. It's called the 4 Nations Face-Off, and it's being broadcast all around the world to fans in more than 200 countries and territories. Here to talk to us about it and the state of the league is NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly. Bill, welcome to the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you for having me.
Well, now, the NHL, it's right now, there's so many topics to talk about, but right now you guys are in the middle, I guess you want to call it a tournament. Is that the best way to describe it, where you have 4 countries and they're all playing for the bragging rights and trying to win the United States? Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. And I would call it an in-season tournament.
Yeah.
This February time period is new for us in terms of operating our own international best-on-best competition tournaments. We have a property known as the World Cup of Hockey, which we're going to bring back in 2028. That tournament has typically been played in the fall time period, and we want to make it consistent. So we're bringing it to the February time period, which will match it up with the Winter Olympic window that typically happens every 4 years. So this is an effort by the NHL and the NHL Players Association to bring back international best-on-best competition on a regular basis, where the players and our fans can count on the fact that we will be contesting kind of world supremacy in hockey every 2 years. This is an odd one because we're having it in 2025, and our players will be participating in the Winter Olympics in Milano next year in 2026. But from there, we would hope to stage a World Cup of Hockey in 2028, go to the Olympics in 2030, another World Cup of Hockey in 2032, Olympics in 2034, and you get the picture. So that's what we're trying to do. We're super excited. We haven't had international best-on-best competition in our sport and with our players since 2016. So we're very excited about this tournament.
And the players are as well. You mentioned battling it out for world supremacy, but there's only 4 nations involved: Canada, the U.S., Finland, and Sweden. The Czech Republic is absent, and of course, Russia is not represented because of rules from the IIHL, the International Ice Hockey League, that prohibits Russia from participating in team sports. Why those 4 countries?
Well, they do. They are major contributors to the talent in our league. I think if you look at the 4 countries, they make up 84% of our player population, which is a big number, obviously. And what we're excited about, particularly in this tournament, is obviously European player participation in the National Hockey League has been growing. And this year, having this competition, it's probably the deepest, most talented tournament that we've ever been able to stage. It would be ideal if we could have 8 teams or more. in the tournament, but we were dealing with kind of some logistical realities, including the Russian aggression in Ukraine, working a little bit against us, expanding the format for this year. But I do expect that it'll be an expanded format for our World Cup of Hockey tournaments in the future.
Bill, I'd love to know how we got here. I mean, let's be clear. Next year is the Winter Olympics. There's a lot going on. The NHL is participating, I believe, for the first time since 2014. How are you building up to that participation? What does the Winter Olympics mean to the NHL?
Well, I think it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for greater exposure. There's probably no bigger platform for sports in the world than the Olympic Games. It's something that is very, very meaningful and important to our players, and we've heard them on that subject. It's something we've covered in collective bargaining, and quite frankly, we're totally on board with, in the sense that the increased exposure will bring increased popularity to the game, and that's good for business. So I think all of it working together will be very beneficial to the National Hockey League and our business.
Well, we were talking about this before we went on the air, so I got to bring in the elephant that's in the room. And since President Trump announced that he was going to put 25% tariffs on Canada, let's say that many Canadians are not happy when American teams are there, and you hear it expressed sometimes during the national anthem for the United States. Can you tell us the situation that's going on right now, and is that starting to ebb away?
Well, I think it's obviously an unfortunate situation. I don't think anybody likes when anthems are booed or disrespected in any way, and certainly we'll count ourselves among that group. We've been monitoring the situation since events started to transpire. I do think it's ebbing a little bit. Our experience just this past weekend in Montreal was a positive experience with two American teams playing there. So I hope that will continue. Sport is a way of breaking down barriers and bringing people closer together. And we hope that this tournament can help do that for sure.
Bill, one thing about this in-season tournament, the Four Nations tournament, is that it takes the place of the All-Star break and the All-Star game. And some observers say that this is kind of a potential solution to addressing the problem of fans losing interest in All-Star games overall, not just in hockey, but we are seeing fewer people tune in to the All-Star game for baseball or the NBA or the Pro Bowl for football. Why do you think that is? What is it about the All-Star game that's kind of losing traction with sports fans?
It's a great question. And I think we're all challenged with trying to come up with creative formats that make compelling All-Star weekends. And I think it's more the experience that we're trying to create to bring fans closer to the players and kind of see them as people. So, I guess what I'd say is obviously, and it translates to our sport in particular, which is hard hitting and very passionate in how hard the players are competing. The All-Star format doesn't allow that really to take place all that much. And I think that's true in all sports. It's less competitive than the actual product that we sell on a nightly basis. So for us, we haven't given up on All-Star Weekend. I think our fans continue to enjoy it, and it has a place in the NHL calendar. Obviously, we're not playing it this year, but we do anticipate, we are playing it next year before the Winter Olympics, actually as a send-off event to the Winter Olympics. So it's really on the leagues and our league in particular to make it a worthwhile, useful, enjoyable experience for the fans, because that's what All-Star really is about.
Bill, I wonder if you could just, for our audience, take us through the financial incentive that's in place for the players in the tournament. I mean, a lot of these tournaments, these in-season tournaments, there's economics involved, right? That gets the players to play to their utmost best. And in this case, I mean, my goodness, you're going to need some incentives to get Austin Matthews, Alexander Barkov, and Victor Hedman to knock off the Sidney Crosby and the Canadians, right? So talk to us a little bit about what's in it for the players.
Well, what I'll say is that the players, they're not donating their time, but in essence, they're donating their time for this tournament because it's so important for them to participate. There is a prize fee made available for each winning player on the winning team, and all the players receive an appearance fee for participating in this tournament. But when in relation to what they earn on a yearly basis as their annual salaries, it's very nominal. So we're doing this together because we think it's great for the sport, because the players enjoy doing it, and because everybody wants to compete for their country. And that's really what's driving the desire to participate in this event.
You are the first ever deputy commissioner of the NHL, and Commissioner Gary Bettman appointed you. What is it like? I mean, is it cool to use the phrase, you are Mr. Bettman's right-hand man?
You can say it. Others have said it. I'll start by just saying I love my job. I love what I do. I love coming to work every day. The diversity of issues that we deal with on a daily basis is very compelling, fun to do. Not all of it's good, but it's a challenge, and it's something I've enjoyed doing at Gary's side. I think I was made deputy commissioner in 2005. I've been with the league for almost 30 years now, so it's like home for me.
Before we let you go, Bill, I wanted to get your thoughts on, as a league executive, what you thought about the Super Bowl. What do you take away from the NFL playoffs that culminates in the Super Bowl? And I'm sure that as a league executive, you look at how other leagues host their big profile events and high profile events and try to extract some learnings from that. What kind of learnings can the NHL take from what the NFL does?
I'd start by saying it's an event that's on a scale that really no one ever really experiences other than by going to the Super Bowl. I have been fortunate enough. I used to be a lawyer in private practice, did some work for the NFL, have good relationships inside the NFL. I'm fortunate enough to attend kind of most of the Super Bowls, and I make it a vacation for myself. But it's on a different scale is really the answer to your question. I talk about the importance of us and other sports leagues kind of building the experience, the fan experience around our All-Star games. I think the NFL obviously does the same thing and has ramped up that fan experience over the course of time I've been going. I think we all are kind of charged with doing the exact same thing, maybe on a somewhat smaller scale. It's an impressive operation.
Bill Daly, Deputy Commissioner of the National Hockey League. He is cool as ice. See what I did? See, they play hockey on the...
say that.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Yeah. Mr. Daly, thank you, sir, for talking with us on the Bloomberg Business of Sports.
Thank you for having us, guys.
And thank you for joining us. For my colleagues Scarlet and Damian Sassower, I'm Michael Barr. Tune in again next week for the latest on the stories moving big money in the world of sports. And don't forget to catch our podcast on all your podcast platforms. You're listening to the Bloomberg Business of Sports from Bloomberg Radio around the world.